The stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation deck of the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon, and Ambassador Kyle Bennett stood watching as the alien ship approached their docking bay. He had been preparing for this moment for 6 months, ever since the Valorian Empire had made first contact with humanity. And now their crystalline vessel glided through space like a living jewel. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever built, with surfaces that seemed to shift between blue and silver, depending on the angle of light. Lieutenant Commander Megan Porter stood beside him, her tablet clutched tightly in her hands as she reviewed the cultural briefing one more time. She was the cultural liaison officer for this mission, which meant every question the aliens asked about humanity would come to her first. Valorians were a proud and ancient species, with silver skin that seemed to glow faintly and eyes that shifted through shades of violet and blue. Their society was built around something they called the emergence, a biological cycle that governed when they could reproduce. It happened only once every 7 Earth years, and their entire civilization had been shaped by this rhythm. Megan had studied everything humanity knew about them, but she still felt unprepared for what was about to happen. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud, and Bennett straightened his uniform. "Ready?" he asked without looking at her. "As I will ever be," she replied. The airlock doors opened with a hiss of pressure equalization, and the Valorian delegation stepped aboard. The Horizon Princess Alindra of the Third House led them, her silver skin catching the light as she moved with a grace that seemed almost liquid. She was tall and slender, with features that were close enough to human to be beautiful, but different enough to remind everyone that she was not of Earth. Behind her came 4 advisors, all wearing robes of deep purple that marked them as members of the noble caste. Bennett stepped forward and offered the traditional greeting they had been taught, a slight bow with the right hand pressed to the chest. "Princess Alindra, on behalf of Earth and the Alliance, we welcome you aboard our vessel." The princess returned the gesture, her violet eyes studying him with obvious curiosity. "Ambassador Bennett, we are honored to be here, and we look forward to building a lasting friendship between our peoples." Her voice was musical, filtered through a translator device that hung around her neck like a pendant. The first day of negotiations went better than anyone had expected. They discussed trade routes between their territories, the possibility of sharing scientific knowledge, and the boundaries that would keep their expanding civilizations from accidentally stepping on each other. Princess Alindra was intelligent and thoughtful, asking questions that showed she had done her research on humanity. By the time the formal meetings ended, both sides seemed optimistic about the future. That evening, Bennett hosted a reception in the main dining hall. The Valorians seemed fascinated by human food, though they could only consume a few items that were chemically compatible with their biology. Megan circulated through the room, answering questions about everything from human music to the strange custom of shaking hands. She was refilling her drink when Princess Alindra approached her. "Lieutenant Commander Porter," the princess said, "I wonder if I might ask you something of a personal nature." Megan set down her glass and gave the princess her full attention. "Of course, Your Highness. I am here to answer any questions you have about humanity." Alindra glanced around as if checking whether anyone else was listening, then leaned slightly closer. "I have studied your species extensively in preparation for this visit, but there is one matter I cannot find clear documentation on." "What would that be?" "How often are humans biologically capable of mating?" Megan felt her cheeks warm slightly, but she kept her expression professional. This was exactly the kind of question she had been trained to handle, even if the training had not quite prepared her for how direct it would be. "That is a complex topic. Your Highness, may I ask why you need this information?" "For diplomatic purposes," Alindra explained. "We must understand your species' reproductive constraints, as it will affect our long-term population projections for any joint colonies we might establish." Megan realized this was a legitimate inquiry and not simply curiosity. The Valorians were a practical people, and they would need this data to plan effectively. Well, Your Highness, humans do not have a specific mating season. The princess tilted her head, her eyes shifting to a deeper shade of violet. You mean your emergence is irregular? How do you coordinate reproduction across your population? No. I mean, we do not have an emergence at all. Humans can mate at any time. Alindra was silent for a moment, and Megan could see her trying to process this information. Any time during your fertile period. You mean, how long does that last? Our entire adult lives, Megan said carefully. From maturity until old age, roughly 50 to 60 years for most humans. The princess stared at her, and for the first time since her arrival, she seemed genuinely shocked. Her advisors, who had drifted closer during the conversation, exchanged glances that Megan could not read. I believe there has been a translation error, Alindra finally said. You cannot possibly mean that humans are capable of reproduction continuously for 6 decades. There is no error. Your Highness, that is impossible. No species could function with such biological freedom. The chaos alone would tear your society apart. Megan shook her head gently. I understand why this seems strange to you, but I assure you it is the truth. Humans have no biological cycle governing reproduction. We are capable of mating at any time we choose. Princess Alindra took a step back, her silver skin seeming to pale slightly. Anytime you choose, she repeated slowly, as if testing the words. Yes. And your males, they are also unrestricted. Yes. Human males can mate at any time as well. The princess turned to her advisors and spoke rapidly in her own language. The translator unable to keep up with the speed of her words, Megan caught fragments of the conversation. Words like unprecedented and impossible and verify immediately. When Alindra turned back to face her, the princess had composed herself, but her eyes still held a trace of disbelief. Lieutenant Commander Porter, I must ask you to forgive my reaction. In all our recorded history, we have never encountered a species without a mating cycle. This changes much of what we thought we knew about biology. There is nothing to forgive, Megan said. I imagine our biology must seem very strange to you. Strange is not the word I would use, Alindra replied. I think perhaps the word I am looking for is terrifying. She said it quietly, almost to herself, and then turned and walked away to rejoin her delegation. Megan watched her go, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The next morning came with tension hanging in the recycled air of the horizon. Megan had barely slept, replaying the conversation with Princess Alindra over and over in her mind. She had not meant to frighten the Valorian delegation, but the princess had used that word deliberately, and it worried her. Ambassador Bennett called an early meeting in his private office before the day's negotiations were scheduled to begin. Tell me exactly what happened, he said, his coffee growing cold on his desk. Megan explained the conversation in detail, leaving nothing out when she finished. Bennett leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. So they had no idea we could reproduce year-round. Apparently not. Sir, their entire civilization is built around the concept of mating cycles. They assumed every intelligent species had one, and now they know we do not. Yes. Bennett was quiet for a long moment. This could complicate things. The Valorians are a cautious people. They plan everything decades in advance. If they see us as biologically unpredictable, it might affect their willingness to form an alliance. Before Megan could respond, a message came through the communication system. Princess Alindra was requesting a private meeting with both of them immediately. They met in the small conference room adjacent to the diplomatic hall. The princess arrived with only one advisor, an elderly Valorian named Counselor Tarin, whose silver skin had faded to a pale gray with age. I spent the night reviewing your biological data, Alindra said without any greeting or preamble. I found no translation errors. Lieutenant Commander Porter was accurate in her statements. I assure you, Your Highness, we meant no offense by not sharing this information earlier, Bennett said. We simply did not realize it would be relevant to your diplomatic concerns. Not relevant. Alindra's voice carried a sharp edge. You are telling me that your species can reproduce at will, without biological limitation, at any point during a span of 50 years. And you did not think this was relevant. We did not understand how significant it would seem to you. The princess turned to look out the viewport at the stars beyond. Do you know what the emergence means to my people? Ambassador, I know it is your mating cycle, occurring once every 7 years. It is more than that, Alindra said quietly. The emergence is sacred to us. It is a time of vulnerability, a time when we lose ourselves to biological imperative. We cannot think clearly during the emergence. We cannot make decisions. We simply feel and act and hope that when it passes, we have not done anything we regret. Counselor Tarn stepped forward, his aged voice steady. In our recorded history, we have never encountered a species without such a cycle. The emergence shapes everything about Valorian society. Our laws account for it. Our architecture accommodates it. Our relationships are built around it, and humans have nothing like it, Alindra said. Turning back to face them, you simply choose when to mate, as casually as you might choose what to eat for breakfast. Megan spoke carefully. It is not quite that casual. Your Highness, human reproduction is deeply tied to our social structures, our relationships, our economic circumstances. Just because we can reproduce at any time does not mean we do. But you have the choice, Tarn said. That is the difference for us. The choice is made by biology. For you, it is made by will. Is that not better? Megan asked. Having control over such a fundamental part of your life. Alindra studied her with those shifting violet eyes. I do not know. I have never known anything different. But I am beginning to understand why your species has accomplished so much in such a short time. What do you mean? Your population numbers are enormous compared to ours. Your expansion across your solar system happened in mere centuries. You recover from wars and disasters with a speed that seemed impossible to us. The princess paused. Now I understand how. You can simply produce more of yourselves whenever you need to. Bennett shifted uncomfortably. That is a somewhat simplified view. Your Highness, our reproductive freedom has caused as many problems as it has solved. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times through overpopulation and the resource wars that followed. But you survived. Yes, we survived. Alindra sat down slowly, her silver robes pooling around her. Tell me more. I wish to understand how humans manage this freedom. How do you keep your society from falling into chaos when any two individuals can produce offspring at any moment? Megan sat down across from her, sensing that this was no longer a diplomatic meeting, but something more personal. We develop social structures to manage it. Marriage and family units create stable environments for raising children. Economic pressures encourage people to wait until they can afford to have offspring. Cultural expectations guide people toward responsible choices. And when those structures fail, then we have problems, Megan admitted. Unwanted pregnancies, children born into poverty, families that cannot support themselves. We have struggled with these issues throughout our history, yet you consider your way superior to ours. I did not say that. I do not think either way is superior. They are simply different, Counselor. Torren made a sound that the translator rendered as a thoughtful hum. This is perhaps the most honest conversation we have had since arriving on your vessel. Lieutenant Commander, I believe honesty is the only way forward, Megan said. Your Highness, I can tell you are worried about what human biology means for any future alliance between our peoples. Can you tell me specifically what concerns you? Alindra was silent for a long moment before answering. The High Council will want to know about this. When they learn that humans have no reproductive restrictions, they will fear that your population will overwhelm ours in any joint venture. They will worry that we cannot compete with a species that can produce generations while we wait for a single emergence. And what do you think? The princess looked at Megan with something that might have been respect. I think that I need to learn much more about humanity before I can form an opinion. I think that fear based on incomplete understanding would be a poor foundation for diplomatic relations. She stood and smoothed her robes. I would like to continue this conversation. Lieutenant Commander Porter, if you are willing to teach me about your species, I am willing to learn. Megan stood as well and offered her hand in the human gesture of agreement. The princess stared at it for a moment, then reached out and clasped it gently. You have very warm hands, Alindra observed. Is that normal for your species? Yes. Humans maintain a constant body temperature. Another difference, the princess said. And this time, there was a hint of curiosity in her voice rather than fear. I suspect I will discover many more before this visit ends. Over the next several days, Megan found herself spending more and more time with Princess Alandrua's. Formal negotiations continued during the day. But in the evenings, the princess would seek her out with new questions about human biology, culture, and society. They would talk for hours in the diplomatic lounge, surrounded by the soft hum of the ship's systems and the endless stars beyond the viewport. So you can mate without intending to reproduce? Alindra asked during one of their conversations, her violet eyes wide with fascination. Yes, Megan confirmed. In fact, most human intimate encounters are not intended for reproduction at all. We develop technologies to prevent conception while still engaging in physical intimacy. Technologies to prevent the natural result of mating, the princess repeated slowly. For what purpose would you do such a thing? Pleasure, Megan said simply. Emotional bonding, stress relief, expression of love. Humans find physical intimacy enjoyable, regardless of whether it leads to offspring. Alindra leaned back in her chair, clearly struggling to process this information. The emergence is not pleasurable in the way you describe. It is intense and overwhelming, and often frightening. We lose ourselves to biological imperative during those times. There is no choice in those moments. Only need. That sounds difficult. It is simply what we are, the princess said. But hearing you describe your experience, I find myself curious about something I never questioned before. What would it be like to have such control over one's own biology? I cannot imagine not having it, Megan admitted. To me, the idea of losing control to biological imperative sounds terrifying. And to me, the idea of always being in control sounds exhausting. Alindra smiled slightly. Perhaps neither of us can truly understand the other's experience. Perhaps not. But we can try. The princess nodded and was about to speak again when the door to the lounge opened and Councillor Taran entered. His expression was troubled, his silver skin seeming even paler than usual. Your Highness, I bring news from the homeworld. Alindra straightened immediately. What has happened? Word of your discussions has reached the High Council. They have been monitoring our communications, as is standard procedure for diplomatic missions. Taran paused. They are concerned. Concerned about what specifically? About human biology, and what it means for the proposed alliance. There are voices on the council arguing that we should not bind ourselves to a species with such unrestricted reproductive capabilities. Megan felt her stomach tighten. They want to cancel the alliance. Some of them do, Taran confirmed. They fear that humans will use their biological freedom to outcompete Valorian populations in any joint colonial ventures. They worry that within a few generations, any shared territory would be dominated by your species simply through numbers. Princess Alindra rose from her chair, her robes swirling around her. This is fear speaking, not wisdom. Have they read my reports? Have they seen the data on human population management? They have. But fear is not always rational, Your Highness. You know this. The princess turned to look out the viewport, her reflection ghostly against the stars. I will address the council myself. I will make them understand that humans are not a threat. With respect. Your Highness, the council may not listen. You are young by our standards, and some members believe your judgment has been compromised by your fascination with human culture. My judgment is fine, Alendra said sharply. It is their judgment that is clouded by prejudice and unfounded fear. Megan stood slowly. Your Highness, perhaps I can help if the council has questions about human biology and society. I can prepare a comprehensive presentation. I can show them data on our population growth rates, our resource management, our social structures. Alendra turned back to face her. You would do this, of course. The alliance between our peoples is important, and I do not want to see it fail because of misunderstandings. The princess studied her for a long moment. Lieutenant Commander Porter, why do you care so much about this alliance? What has humanity gained from friendship with the Valorian Empire? Megan considered the question carefully before answering. Knowledge. Perspective. The chance to learn from a civilization far older than our own. But more than that, I believe that contact between different species is valuable in itself. Every time we meet someone truly different from ourselves, we learn something about what it means to be who we are. A philosophical answer. I suppose it is. But it is also true. Alendra nodded slowly. Very well, prepare your presentation. I will arrange for you to address the council alongside me, but I warn you, they will not be easily convinced. I understand. The princess moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. Lieutenant Commander, there is something I have been wondering. Yes, if humans can mate at any time, and you have technologies to prevent reproduction, then your intimate relationships must be very different from ours. Do humans form permanent pair bonds? Or do you simply move from partner to partner as your moods dictate? Megan smiled. That varies widely among individuals. Some humans mate with many partners throughout their lives. Others form bonds with a single partner that last until death. Most fall somewhere in between. And which are you? The question was surprisingly personal. But Megan found she did not mind. I have not yet found someone I wanted to bond with permanently. But I hope to someday. Hope, Alendra repeated. That is another concept that seems very human. We Valorians tend to accept what is rather than hoping for what might be. Perhaps that is something we can teach you. The princess smiled. And for a moment she looked almost human. Perhaps it is. I will see you tomorrow, Lieutenant Commander. We have much work to do. She left with Counselor Taran, and Megan stood alone in the lounge, looking out at the stars and wondering if hope would be enough to save the Alliance. Princess Alendra returned to the Valorian vessel to communicate with the High Council. Via quantum link, she had invited Megan to accompany her as a cultural consultant. And Ambassador Bennett had agreed after only a brief hesitation. The crystalline ship was even more beautiful on the inside than it had appeared from the outside. The walls seemed to glow with an inner light, and the corridors curved in ways that made Megan slightly dizzy until she adjusted to the alien architecture. The communication chamber was a circular room at the heart of the vessel, dominated by a raised platform surrounded by 12 holographic projectors when Alendra activated the system. The air above the platform filled with ghostly images of the High Council members, each one seated in their own distant chamber on the Valorian homeworld. Princess Alendra, the eldest counselor, spoke first, his voice resonating through the translation system. You have spent days among the humans learning of their biology. What have you concluded? Alendra stood straight and proud, her silver skin luminous in the chamber's soft light. I have concluded that we have been asking the wrong questions. Honored Council, we asked how often humans can mate. expecting an answer that fit within our understanding of the universe. The answer we received challenged that understanding. They are biologically unrestricted, another counselor said, her tone sharp with disapproval. This makes them dangerous. Does it? Alindra asked calmly. Or does it simply make them different? Different in ways that threaten our very existence, a third counselor argued. Their population grows unchecked while ours remains stable. Within a few generations, they could outnumber us 10-1. They could, Alindra agreed, but they will not. And I have brought Lieutenant Commander Megan Porter to explain why. The council's attention shifted to Megan. 12 pairs of violet eyes studying her through the holographic display. She felt very small and very human in that moment. But she had prepared for this, honored council, she began, keeping her voice steady. I understand your concerns about human biology. From your perspective, a species without reproductive restrictions must seem chaotic and potentially threatening. But I ask you to consider our history. She activated her tablet and sent data to the chamber's display system. Charts and graphs appeared in the air, showing human population growth over the past several centuries. Humanity reached its first billion individuals approximately 200 years ago. Today, our population stands at just under 12 billion. By your calculations, given our reproductive freedom, we should number in the hundreds of billions by now. Why do you not? The eldest counselor asked. Because we made choices. We developed social systems that encouraged smaller families. We created economic structures that rewarded delayed reproduction. We educated our people about the consequences of unchecked population growth. Megan paused. We did not need biological restrictions because we created cultural ones. Cultural restrictions can be abandoned, the sharp-voiced counselor said. Biology cannot. That is true, Megan acknowledged. But consider what our cultural restrictions represent. They represent will and choice and self-determination. They represent our ability to look at our own nature and decide to be something more than what biology dictates. She brought up new images, showing human cities and farms and wilderness preserves existing side by side. We could have covered our planet with concrete and steel. We could have consumed every resource and destroyed every ecosystem. Some of our ancestors tried to do exactly that. But we stopped them. We chose to preserve, to conserve. To limit ourselves, Princess Alindra stepped forward to stand beside Megan. Honored council. This is what I have learned during my time among the humans. They are not slaves to their biology. They are masters of it, where nature provided no limits. They created limits of their own, where biology offered only impulse. They developed restraint, pretty words, the third counselor said. But words do not change the fundamental mathematics. Their population will always have the potential to grow faster than ours. Potential is not destiny, Alindra replied. The humans have proven this again and again throughout their history. They have the potential for great destruction. Yet they have also shown the capacity for great creation. They have the potential for endless war. Yet they have built lasting peace among nations that once hated each other. The eldest counselor raised a hand for silence. Princess Alindra, you speak with passion, but passion is not enough to overcome the council's concerns. What assurances can you offer that humans will continue to restrain themselves? Megan spoke before Alindra could respond. I can offer no absolute assurances. Honored council, because I cannot predict the future. But I can tell you this. Humanity wants this alliance. We see in the Valorian people a chance to learn from a civilization that has achieved stability over thousands of years. We admire your careful planning and your respect for biological rhythm. We believe that together our species can be stronger than either could be alone. You want to learn from us, the sharp-voiced counselor said with obvious skepticism. Yes. Your society has achieved a balance that we are still struggling to find. You have learned to live within your biological constraints in ways that promote harmony and stability. We have much to learn from your example. The council members conferred among themselves in rapid Valorian that the translator could not follow. Megan stood quietly, feeling Alindra's presence beside her like a warm current in the cool air of the chamber. Finally, the eldest counselor turned back to face them. Lieutenant Commander Porter, you have spoken well, but the council requires time to deliberate. We will render our decision within 3 of your Earth days. Thank you. Honored Council. The holographic images flickered and faded, leaving Megan and Alindra alone in the chamber. You did well, the princess said quietly. Better than I expected. I meant every word. I know. That is why it was effective. Alindra turned to face her fully. Megan, I must ask you something. It was the first time the princess had used her first name. Yes. Do you truly believe humans and Valorians can learn from each other? Or were those simply diplomatic words meant to sway the council? Megan considered the question seriously. I believe it completely. Your species has wisdom that we lack. And perhaps we have something to offer as well. The universe is vast and strange, and no single species has all the answers. Alindra smiled, a genuine expression that softened her alien features. Then let us hope the council agrees with you. The council deliberated for 3 days, and during that time Princess Alindra remained aboard the Horizon. She seemed unable to return to her own vessel while the decision hung in the balance. Preferring instead to continue her education in human culture, Megan became her constant companion. Introducing her to human art and music and literature, they spent hours in the ship's cultural archive, exploring the vast collection of human creative works that had been loaded into the database for this mission. The princess was particularly fascinated by love, songs, and romantic poetry. Your species has created countless works about the desire for connection, Alindra observed as they listened to a collection of ballads from different human eras. This is what you do with your biological freedom. You write about it, and sing about it, and dream about it. Love is complicated for us, Megan admitted. Having the freedom to choose makes the choosing meaningful. But it also means we can choose wrong. We can be hurt. We can hurt others, and yet you continue to seek it. Always. It is part of what makes us human. Alindra was quiet for a moment, listening to a song about 2 lovers separated by war. The emergence is not like this, she said finally. When it comes upon us, we do not choose our partners. Biology chooses for us. We pair with whoever is nearest and compatible. Afterward, we often do not remember clearly what happened. That sounds lonely. I never thought of it that way before. But perhaps you are right. The princess turned to look at her. Your way seems both more beautiful and more painful. It can be both. Sometimes at the same time, they were interrupted by a chime from the communication system. Ambassador Bennett's voice came through the speaker. Lieutenant Commander Porter. Princess Alindra, please report to the diplomatic hall immediately. We have received word from the High Council. They hurried through the corridors of the Horizon, neither speaking, but both acutely aware of how much was at stake. The diplomatic hall was already crowded when they arrived, with the human crew on one side and the Valorian delegation on the other. Bennett stood at the center of the room. His expression carefully neutral. Counselor Taran held a data tablet in his aged hands, the screen glowing with the council's message. Shall I read it? He asked Princess Alindra. Please. Taran cleared his throat and began. The High Council of the Valorian Empire has reviewed the testimony of Princess Alindra of the Third House and the human Lieutenant Commander Megan Porter. We have deliberated extensively on the matter of human biology and its implications for the proposed alliance. He paused, and Megan felt her heart pounding in her chest. The Council acknowledges that human biology, while different from our own, does not pose an inherent threat to Valorian interests. The evidence presented demonstrates that humans have developed sophisticated cultural mechanisms for managing their reproductive freedom, and there is no reason to believe these mechanisms will fail. A murmur ran through the crowd. But Taran continued reading furthermore. The Council has voted to proceed with the alliance as originally proposed. In addition, we authorize the establishment of a cultural exchange program to foster greater understanding between our species. Princess Alindra is appointed as the first Valorian ambassador to humanity. Effective immediately, the room erupted in cheers from the human crew. Even the normally stoic Valorian advisors seemed pleased, their silver skin flushing with color that Megan had learned indicated positive emotion. Bennett stepped forward to clasp hands with Councillor Doreen in the human gesture of agreement. This is a historic day for both our peoples. Indeed it is. Ambassador, Megan felt a hand on her arm and turned to find Princess Alindra standing beside her. I owe you thanks. Lieutenant Commander, you were patient with my questions, even when they must have seemed strange or invasive. Not at all, Megan said. Every species has things that seem ordinary to them but extraordinary to others. That is the beauty of first contact. We get to see ourselves through new eyes. You have given me much to think about, Alindra said. Your species is remarkable in ways I never anticipated. You take biological freedom and turn it into art and music and love. You take the potential for chaos and create meaning instead. We try. We do not always succeed. No one always succeeds, but you keep trying. That is what matters. The celebration continued around them. But for a moment they stood in their own private bubble of understanding. I have one more question, Alindra said, a hint of humor in her shifting violet eyes. One that is perhaps less diplomatic and more personal. Go ahead. Given that humans can mate at any time and derive pleasure from it regardless of reproductive intent, the princess paused. How do you ever get anything else done? Megan laughed. A genuine sound of delight that drew curious looks from nearby crew members. Honestly, Your Highness, it is a daily struggle. Alindra made a sound that the translator rendered as something close to laughter. I believe I am going to enjoy my time as ambassador very much, and I am going to enjoy helping you understand my species, even the embarrassing parts. Especially the embarrassing parts. Those are often the most interesting. The princess smiled. And in that moment, Megan could see the future stretching out before them. Not just for their two species, but for the two of them specifically. There would be more questions and more answers. More moments of confusion and more breakthroughs of understanding. There would be challenges they could not yet imagine and triumphs they could not yet dream. For now, standing in that crowded hall surrounded by the sounds of celebration, it was enough to know that the first step had been taken. Humanity and the Valorian Empire had found common ground. Not despite their differences, but because of them, and it all started with a simple question about how often humans could mate. The answer, as it turned out, had changed everything.